Hi, everyone. It's been a while since I've done a Facebook Live, and I'm sitting here at a sister's house riding a wave of a really beautiful week where these intense experiences are happening in my life that invite me to be more present, more in my body, more available to connection with the divine and the greater synchronicity that weaves this life together. And I felt this desire to do a Facebook Live and connect and share. And my sister, not blood sister, but sister on the path, asked me, "What do you want to do a Facebook Live on?" And when I felt into that, what felt most resonant is talking about being able to hold higher levels of sensation in the body and inviting for those of you who pop on to please say hello so I can feel you and let me know who's in the room. So I titled this How to Have Greater Power and Influence in Your Life. And in the work that I do with people in private coaching and group facilitation, that's essentially what it is that I'm supporting people in doing. It's learning how to have greater power and influence in our lives by coming into alignment with our authentic self so that we can be available to receive greater and greater amounts of experiences, resources, abundance, connection that is in resonance, in alignment with who we truly are. So, how do we have greater power and influence in our life? My response to that question, or perhaps the statement that I'm going to speak on, is that the level of power and influence that we have in our life is directly related to the amount of sensation that we can hold and channel within our bodies. So I'll say that again. The level of power and influence that we have in our life is directly related to the amount of sensation that we can hold and channel within our body. So I want to define what sensation is. Sensation to me is the felt sense, physical experience in our body when more and more energy gets activated within our body. Examples of some of the things that raise sensation in the body. An obvious one is arousal, sexual arousal. And that's not just in a sexual experience, but imagine being on a date with someone and there's flirtation going on between you two, and it almost feels like there's this dynamic tension between you and the other person, and you can feel the sensation rising in your body as you're staying connected with this other person. Other ways that sensation can arise in the body is through fear, through being in an experience where something is happening in your reality that's triggering the fear that you are not safe. Now, you might actually be not safe. You might actually almost be about to be hit by a car. You might actually be getting verbally threatened by someone. You might actually be not safe. But often what I find, at least in the coaching work and the facilitation work that I do, is that fear is more the acronym false evidence appearing real, where there are these old experiences that we've clung on to of not being safe in dynamics with people. So there are certain dynamics that can trigger fear responses that raise sensation in our body to alert us, oh my God, something's happening. I'm being activated by this experience. I could go more into that, but that's another tangent. Another thing that can raise sensation in the body is having uncomfortable conversations or dynamics that occur in relationship that feel uncomfortable or confronting in some way. So we've talked about sexual experiences, arousal, intense attraction or flirtation. We've also talked about fear. We've talked about discomfort. So as you can see, so many of these happen in the context of how we show up in relationship. And the reason that the level of power and influence in our life is directly related to how much sensation we can hold in the body is because often, not often, I believe that all of us have a certain threshold for how much sensation, how much energy we can hold in our bodies before our ego says, I can't handle this anymore. This is way too much energy for me to be with. So we have a threshold that we can meet. And when we hit that threshold, it's like it's a tripwire effect where there's some type of defense mechanism that gets activated within us where it does something to to uh, to disconnect us from our body or to disconnect from the amount of sensation going on within our body. Hello, Emily Oren. Thank you for being here. So one tripwire could be disassociation. This can often happen in sexual experiences, for example, if there's previous trauma and sexuality. Uh, and in challenging conversations as well, or when you're afraid that you're in a conversation that's unsafe. If in the past we experienced a situation where we actually weren't safe, what we do is we wind up finding coping mechanisms to avoid being in the body so that we don't have to fully feel the impact of the unsafe experience. So one of the, as I was saying, one of the tripwire coping mechanisms could be disassociation, where yes, we're still here, our body is still here, but we're not actually present in the body. And when we dissociate, it means that we might just be going into story, we might start rambling, but it's like we're not actually in the present moment. It's like we've gone somewhere else so that we can avoid having to feel the pain of what we fear might happen. Another coping mechanism can be reaction. It can be the lashing out. And this also, again, is coming from a place of fearing being with the felt sense in the body. So to avoid being with the vulnerability of the felt sense in the body, we react or lash out in such a way so that the stimulus that's impacting the raising of sensation will be impacted in such a way that it won't keep doing the thing that's raising sensation in our body. So there are a multitude of ways that we can react. Notice that I'm saying react instead of respond. To me, the difference between responding and reacting is that reaction is not often based in consciousness and intention, but more based in impulse and gut response. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if our reactions in our relationships continue to facilitate experiences that we don't want to have happen, then it's something to look at. So again, coming back to the statement of having greater power and influence in our life being directly related to how much sensation we can hold in our body means that if we actually want to have a different experience, create a different neural pathway, so to speak, where we don't keep recreating the same pattern of, perhaps and attracting in toxic relationships where we keep attracting in not necessarily the same person, but the same type of person where we don't feel safe, where we don't feel like our boundaries are honored. We need to learn how to be able to stay present with the amount of sensation in the body. And rather than being in judgment or reaction to the sensation in the body, learning how to create a sense of safety in our body so that we can stay present in it, actually become curious of what is going on, and be able to lean in and stay present so we can actually influence the direction that we want the interaction to go. Because if we allow for that sensation tripwire to run the show where it's like, oh, if I reach this level of sensation, it means that I'm not safe. It means that I need to jump ship because the ship is burning. And rather than trying to put out the fire, I'm just going to bail because I'm afraid that I can't handle the fire. So this is really about choosing to opt into our own sovereignty, to realizing that even though perhaps in the past it hasn't been safe to be who we are, that it is actually safe now. We actually have the capacity and the ability to take care of ourselves, to make choices about who gets to be in our innermost tenderness of hearts, and that we don't need to tolerate being treated in ways that don't serve the opening of our heart, and that we actually have choice, and that we don't need to continue to be victims of experiences that remind us of past experiences that hurt us. And this is what I see in so many of the relationship patterns that I work with people in, is that it's like we have a negative experience when we were younger, and we become familiar with that energetic in the body, and then we continue to attract that experience in because that's what we believe love is, or that's because what we're familiar with. And I also want to bring in one other piece here, that holding greater amounts of sensation in the body isn't just about being able to be present with more discomfort or pain, but it's also about allowing ourselves to receive more and more goodness in our lives, more and more prosperity, more and more abundance, allowing ourselves to have more money, love, pleasure, and support in our lives without feeling like there's only so much that we can have before we're unworthy of it. Or there's only so much we can have that, oh, it's okay for me to have enough, but to have more than enough is wrong because people who desire money are bad or evil or not connected to the earth, whatever it is. I know that's some of the stories that I have had to do a lot of work around, to allow myself to open up and expand and receive greater levels of prosperity while still feeling connected to my integrity and my authenticity. So a lot of the work that I've had to do, and I'm reaching a new threshold for that now, because we will continue to expand our thresholds for what is possible in our lives, is looking at, can we stay present and allow for the sensation of goodness, of feeling pleasure, of feeling fully supported, and perhaps what fear exists, what judgment exists, what past stories exist that have us feel shame for feeling good, or shame for having more than enough, because all of these stories create what I think Gay Hendricks wrote the book The Big Leap, and he talks about the upper limit problem. Another platform that I've studied within talks about our havingness level, how much we can allow ourselves to have before the sensation of that experience becomes so intense in our body that we don't actually feel. Ultimately, I believe that this comes down to our relationship with our own power, realizing how deeply powerful we are, and that there's actually no limit to how much power can move through our bodies, because I believe that power is synonymous with life force energy, which is synonymous with erotic energy, which is again why there's such taboo in our culture around sexuality and so much fear around opening to our sexuality, because really it's opening to the infinite supply of divine life force energy that can flow through us in service to the betterment of our lives and everyone around us and the planet. So ultimately, if I go meta, really this work is about learning how to become clear vessels to embody our godlike potential, acknowledging that there's not hierarchy, that we are all incarnates of God, goddess-like being, and we all have the capacity to fully inhabit power and have great influence in our lives in a way that is pleasurable and expansive and abundant, where it's not at the expense of another. And that's another conversation, and that's a lot of what I'm really interested in the community dynamics work that I'm doing, in the group facilitation work that I'm doing, in the women's circles that I'm running in the Bay Area, and the different conversations that I'm having around psychedelic transformational containers and things of that nature is how do we, as not just as individuals, but as groups of people, learn how to create safe and mutually empowered spaces where we learn how to inhabit and embody and channel our power in a way that is responsible and grounded and connected to our hearts and also connected to our vulnerability. So that true power does not mean power over, but it means power with, and that we create from that place. So, how to have greater power and influence in your life while also being connected to your heart and your vulnerability and the world around you. Knowing that deepening into your authentic pleasure is also in service to sharing your gifts in the world and the fulfillment of your purpose, and that it's actually one and the same. So thank you for receiving. Gloria, oh, thank you for being here. I'm so looking forward to meeting you at the Women's Circle tomorrow at my home in Berkeley. Diana, really lovely to connect with you as well. Emily, I love how you talk about tracking the sensation and being attuned to that. Yes, this tripwire effect. Yes, Emily, I so look forward to when you and I get to reconnect as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Such deep love and gratitude and blessings. And may you allow for greater sensation in your body in whatever form it shows up today, removing the good and the bad label from it, but just being with the sensation and knowing that regardless of what is catalyzing it is something that is uncomfortable or deeply pleasurable, or perhaps the same thing, that it is actually all in service to your deepening, your expansion, and your ultimate remembering and embodying of who you truly are. And so it is. Much love and talk to you soon.